What is going on, everybody? It's your boy John, and welcome back to Gearbox. So today we are obviously going to be talking about old trusty, the 2019 F-150, and to get right into it, I absolutely adore this truck. I love it so much. But with all that being said, as perfect as you might think a car or a truck or a plane or whatever, a boat is, naturally everything is going to have some downfalls and, you know, some things to look out for, right? Nothing's perfect. It's good to know the good, bad, and the ugly when you start to go on the journey of potentially purchasing a truck such as an F-150. Now, before we get into this, I do want to mention this video is going to be specific to the 3.5 liter twin turbo Ecoboost engine. I'm sure some of these carry over, but once again, in the case that they don't, this is about the 3.5 Ecoboost. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Right off the bat, issue number one that I want to address has to do with camshafts and the fact that this truck is a dual overhead cam V6 twin turbocharged engine. Now specifically what we're talking about here, guys, is the cam phasers. Now I'm sure a lot of people who are not mechanically, you know, I guess formally trained like myself are very familiar with camshafts or crankshafts or whatever, more, I guess, normal sounding parts, for lack of a better term. But obviously cam phasers are going to be a part of the camshaft assembly. Now, basically what these cam phasers do is essentially speeds up or retards timing of the engine, really to just add efficiency based on what you're actually doing. There's a helicopter flying over. So what I mean by this is if you're doing some leisurely cruising on the highway, you know, obviously you're not putting a lot of strain on the engine versus, you know, compared to if you had a big, you know, trailer on the back of this thing and you're towing a boat through mountains, right? Obviously the highway driving is going to need less power and less output from the engine, whereas the towing, you're going to want all of that horsepower and torque and, you know, overall kind of optimize the engine to give you exactly what you need to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. This is all done with the cam phasers. Now what happens with this is basically because the cam phasers are able to adjust timing on the fly, when you have a bad cam phaser, it's not going to be able to adjust. You're just going to be sitting there in a certain timing, which isn't going to be optimal for the type of driving that you're trying to do. This is problematic, right? You're not getting as much out of the engine and the truck in general as you probably should because you have a faulty cam phaser. The second topic I want to discuss today is going to be spark plug failure. And yes, you might be saying, John, spark plugs naturally, you know, wear out over time and fail. And yes, you're correct. But really what I'm trying to get at here is premature spark plug failure. And really the reason for that is given the fact that we are dealing with a forced induction V6 versus a naturally aspirated V8. Just those turbos alone are going to create a heck of a lot more heat, a heck of a lot more pressure in the actual, you know, cylinders themselves, you know, where the pistons are firing. And that ultimately over time is going to create more wear because of that additional heat and pressure compared to, you know, the V8 model of the F-150. There's nothing you can really do about this. It's just the nature of the beast when you're dealing with forced induction engines. Obviously, if you've stuck around for a little bit and seen my WRX and that spark plug failure, it's probably linked the same way, just, you know, more pressure, more heat. Of course, I'm tuned on the WRX, but now we're getting off topic. But either way, number two, Premature spark plug failure, watch out for it. It's an easy fix early on, and it's just gonna save you a heck of a lot of time, money, and effort to keep an eye on it. Number 3 in this list is going to be a stretched timing chain. Now, one thing to get out of the way right away, your timing chain isn't actually stretching. It's a metal chain. It's like a bike chain, essentially. Really what we're talking about is the gaps in the actual chain are going to break off over time, and it will start this wide and will end up this wide. Very marginal differences, but will ultimately affect the timing of your engine way more than you want it to, and can be a catastrophic failure, once again, if you're not paying attention and checking these things early. Now, according to my research, the reason for this is kind of a Ford problem, and they've since made changes to it, which I'll explain in a second. But because we're dealing with a dual overhead cam, you have 2 cams up here, and then you have the actual crankshaft in the bottom of the engine. So it ends up being like a V shape with the chain, and that just puts a lot of stress on some of those main points of tension on that timing chain, which will ultimately lead to stretched timing chain and throwing your vehicle out of timing. Like I mentioned earlier, the newer Ecoboost engines, I believe it's maybe 2016 to 23, they actually run 2 separate chains to eliminate some of those pinch or stress points in the chain for the first gen to eliminate this issue. From my understanding, that's done a great job of mitigating that issue. So if you are a Gen 1, you're probably gonna want to look more closely at this versus a Gen 2 Ecoboost. But either way, that's gonna be point number 3. Point number 4, we are talking about turbo failure. Now this is very important given the fact that we have not 1 turbo, but 2 turbos. Now the first thing I want to talk about here is the fact that turbos inevitably, as a mechanical part, are naturally going to wear down over time. And that's just a fact. Similar to the spark plug conversation, they are subject to a hell of a lot of heat, a hell of a lot of pressure. They're spinning at 100,000+ RPMs at full spool. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and eventually over time will go wrong. But once again, compared to a naturally aspirated V8, really all you're concerned with there is the actual engine, the block. You're not dealing with any forced induction to potentially cause issues. Now, of course, there are trade-offs from going from a 3.5 twin turbo EcoBoost from a V8, you know, gas mileage, low end, high end. You know, we can talk about all of these different things, but if you're going to drive your truck for a long time, which I'm assuming a lot of us are, it's something to keep in mind. And this is something that, once again, if you notice a small thing early on, get it checked out. It's not gonna hurt to ask. The worst that's gonna happen is you pay a little bit of money just for diagnostic and having people take a look, but you'd rather spend the money up front versus have a massive turbo failure, have the actual turbine blow into a million pieces, go into the engine, and then you are shit out of luck. Number 4, turbo failure. For the 5th and final point I want to make here, we are talking about oil pan leaks. Now, this oil pan leak is typically just subject to the actual gasket. It's not like metal is messed up and has a hole in it or anything, which is good, but we're talking about gaskets. Everyone knows gaskets are important, whether we're talking about oil pan gaskets on the truck, whether we're talking about head gaskets on the WRX. They're important, they're there for a reason, and if those gaskets are compromised and that seal is no longer sealed, we're gonna have issues. Now, I'm no mechanic, I'm not formally trained, I'm not any of this, but I am not a complete moron. What I mean by that is we all know how important oil is to the health and longevity of our beloved engine and truck. So if your oil is leaking, get it looked at immediately. It'll be a small, quick fix in the short term, or potentially extremely catastrophic shit on the back end. And promise me, you do not want to deal with a blown engine because you noticed oil leaking out maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and you said, it's probably fine. And then you're going down the highway and you are bricked. That's no fun. That's an expensive day and a lot of added stress that I'm gonna assume you don't want in your life. I don't, so I'll go ahead and just make that a blanket statement. But that is going to be number 5, oil pan leaks. Now really, how can we wrap all of these things up into one clear and concise statement? And that is going to be, do your regular maintenance. You've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it a million times. I'm a big proponent of maintenance. And it's not because I'm completely OCD and I make money off of you getting maintenance or anything like that. I'm a little bit OCD, but I surely don't make money off you doing maintenance. Maintenance is king. You need to get your truck looked at every once in a while, just for shits and giggles, an overall health check. You need to be vigilant. If you see anything wrong, or feel something wrong, or smell something wrong, odds are something's wrong. Just have that mindset. It's not difficult. Maintenance is your friend. It might suck in the meantime while you have to drop your truck off to get an oil change or get the engine looked at or whatever, but in the long run, you will thank me later, and that is going to be that. So, if you have any other issues that 3.5 Ecoboost F-150s tend to have, drop them in the comment section down below. Of course, those 5 things are going to be the most common or catastrophic. There are going to be little things here or there, but it is what it is. If you like this video, please give it a big fat thumbs up. As always, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. You know the drill. And until next time, peace. 16在自己那张脏乱的床，手摆好姿态对我装上了糖。